Put a little brain and a little bit of luck here, Sometimes it takes both to make it out on the stock market. So an alternative title would also be The Plight of a Political Science Major on the Stock Market. As a preface, going into this stock market presentation, I just want to say that I was very excited, however, not super interested or very versed in the stock market and all the terms. But now I've turned into a decent stock market analyst, and if you read that joke in the bottom left, maybe you understand it. My portfolio I named the House of Rep, and the naming procedure behind this is actually because if you notice at any time during like October, in that time, the House of Rep was in absolute chaos with the House Speaker being ousted. So with my companies here, you can see Ardelyx, Sunrun, Sony, SentinelOne, and Muvene Real Estate. 3 or 4 of these are small caps. So obviously that would influence a lot of volatility to the project. And one part of this, my stock picking procedure was the tech aspect. So I thought that technology would actually be the most effective thing to invest in when looking at the stock market, as it has the most opportunities for innovation, in my opinion. And we bought these 5 stocks. This is Ardelyx, kind of a healthcare stock, but I think it's just a disguised technology stock because they're just manufacturing and innovating in that sector. Sunrun Solar, SentinelOne, cybersecurity, Sony Tech, and then Muvene Real Estate, which is also kind of just a tech stock because they innovate in real estate technologies. And 4 of these are small caps, which means that they have a lot of volatility, super risky, but also definitely can potentially have a huge upside. Technical analysis are fundamental. This is one thing that was huge to my stock picking process. As you can see from here, went through a variety of different methods to pick these stocks. And if you notice this little disparity right here, I actually took 700 out of Muvene Real Estate, which is a stock I actually wasn't super confident in, but due to deadlines, I had to kind of expedite that process and put 700 more in SentinelOne. Totally gambling, $99,990. So one thing about this project was a lot of the macroeconomic effects that took place to the market throughout the entire period. We had at the start the COP28 meeting that was announced for November, and by the rumor, sell the news, people were really looking to see how the OPEC and oil nations in the Middle East would affect the market with the changes to the climate and how they want to cut back on that oil. Later we had the Israel-Hamas war in the Middle East as well. And after that, around November 1st, we see huge news from the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, where he said that the interest rates would stay, which is huge news for the market because interest rates staying obviously would make it easier for companies to buy the resources required for procedures. A few days later, we get the Bureau of Labor Statistics saying the unemployment rate, actually bear news, where we see that the unemployment rate decreased by 0.2%, meaning that interest rates are more likely to go up because more people are employed. And then we have a truce in November. This is important for later, you have to remember that. And we have big dovish news at the very end of November with the Federal Reserve confirming that we're going to see rate decreases in spring. All right, just for a little talk on my laggard crowning here. It wasn't very fun to be laggard for 2 weeks straight, and it was mainly because of Sunrun and Muvene Real Estate, which we'll get more on this later, and we'll get more on these stocks later. All right, my first stock, Ardelyx, healthcare stock. They're relatively new to the market and only being here for around 9 years. And they innovate in the biopharmaceutical industry for creating first-in-class therapies so that people can be treated by the first ever medical supplies that will ever be supplied for their disease or illness. One thing that stood out to me is that they also make GI meds, which can be helpful to people such as myself who have debilitating gastrointestinal tract illnesses. And then a quote from their website: they use new mechanisms to create their technology and biopharmaceutical needs. As you can see, take note of the market cap 1.1, so it's a really small company, super volatile chart, as you can see here. It's trending up really at the end. We'll talk more about it in the next slide. And 3 reasons why I picked Ardelyx. One, you can see my investments are super full risk, and it was a small cap. I thought it looked nice, had good fundamentals, lots of good news around it. 2, I believe in the biopharmaceutical industry and the amount of innovation they can provide. And 3, they were experimenting with this GI drug that I was talking about, which I may be able to use potentially. 10 weeks of Ardelyx. So instead of graphing or taking the graph right off Yahoo Finance, I decided to make my own graph of the tracking logs that we did throughout the 10 weeks. And as you can see, it was very volatile, going up and down throughout, but also having an initial drop at the start around week 3 due to economic uncertainty, I would say. Throughout, we see that later around here, week 7, RSUs, restricted stock units, are distributed to employees, which could be really good because that incentivizes employees to do more work and contribute more to the company. We would look at the PE ratio to determine how effective these potential incentives would be, but it is unavailable because this company is so small. Ardelyx 10 weeks. We see the high being 478, which is also the liquidation price, and the low being 323. So actually, it may have not been super as much volatile as I thought, but luckily due to good news throughout, I think the stock really took off later on. And the max of profit I made is 4K from this. Sunrun, the next stock. This is a solar company founded in 2007 on the NASDAQ. Came out in 2015. Not around for too long as well. Market cap of 3.113, potential 5-bagger as well. Founded by Ed, Nat, and Lynn Jurek. They created this with the intent of providing solar panels to the populace so that people can have access to solar technology at a cheaper price and also take advantage of the social benefits to the environment with solar technology. As you can see from the chart, 10-week tracking graph. It starts off pretty well, but declines from there, hitting a low on week 5, which we'll talk about on a few more slides. So why did I pick, before that, we gotta get to why I picked Sunrun. Sunrun. I've seen the trucks around the neighborhood before. You may not have seen too many of them, but they do exist, and people are getting their solar panels supplied by them. So I thought that was one good reason to purchase this stock. 2, I'm a fan of solar power's benefit to the environment. The Green New Deal, AOC here, advocating for gas to be removed in 2050. So I thought that with this news, we could see a uprisal in the solar industry. And then 3rd, Andrew Yang, Hoku Q. He is one of the best stock pickers according to Gurney. So he inspired me to pick a solar stock as well. So Sunrun, we see that its performance was really, really bad around here, dropping to around 8. That was really concerning for me. I lost around like $3,000 here. It put me in laggard position, as I said earlier. And this was due to short sellers and due to the overall poor performance in the industry, as well as underperforming Q3 projections. However, when we see Q3 earnings actually released around week 6, those projections were incorrect, and Sunrun actually outperformed their projections, meaning that the stock had actually upside in it. And then eventually, when we get to the end, around November 1st, or November 30th, we see the Santa rally absolutely bump the stock all the way up to 14, ending at a high of 14.34, the liquidation price as well, and a low being at 8.43 on week 5. Made me around $3,000 in the stock. Next up, we have Sony. Sony, to add a little balance to my portfolio, like Griffin said, I wanted at least one blue chip to add to my portfolio. And I picked Sony. Sony, founded in 1946 by Akio Morita and Masaru Ibuka, if I'm saying that correctly, I don't know how to say that. IPO in September 1970 when they were making Walkmans, televisions and cameras. You probably don't know what a Walkman is, but my grandpa probably has one and he's told me about it on his Walkman service. So they've created these high-tech electronics for years, and I just know them around since the PlayStation. And if you don't know, in 1994, around when the PlayStation was released, this is when their stock price skyrocketed. So, and they became a blue chip from there. Why did I pick Sony? Strong fundamentals. I felt that my risky strategy required a little bit of balance, so that was one reason. I wanted a blue chip that could have potential upside, so 82 to 97 per share sounded decent to me, as I could buy more shares of the company and smaller percent increases could influence the stock's price to go up more, or not necessarily more, but it would provide me more upside. And the third reason, I love the PS5. And I think it had really strong potential for growth in the holiday season. Why did this happen? So we were going to talk about week 5 a little. This drop right here, it's actually not as severe as it looks, but it was around 79. And this was due to, I'm guessing, investors selling off the share at 85 with this price right here, or because of Microsoft's huge investments in AI and their acquisition of Activision. And as we know, the forces of competition on the market can also sway stocks. So at the end, Sony performed relatively well for me. As a blue chip, it closed at 88.05 on the end date, and I made around $763 on it. It only went down to 79.62. That was the week 5 trend. Next up, we have Sentinel-1. Sentinel-1, oh boy. Founded in January 2013. Market cap was 4.78 billion. Definitely a chance for a 5-bagger. Became an IPO on June 30th, 2021 on the New York Stock Exchange. And the symbol is just S. Born from the hustle, according to the website, Sentinel-1 absolutely wrecks the cybersecurity industry in terms of innovation, showcasing that they're a potential leader among the heavy competition. This is my favorite stock among all of them, and there was a little bit of insider trading, which might have been a little risky here, a little risque, but I did not trust that this insider trading would actually lead to much negatives. And the reasons why I picked it, aside from that, is that one, it's in the cybersecurity industry and uses AI to operate their technology. 2, it's a small cap, but has an insane amount of volume compared to Ardelyx, which is a 3 times lower price on stock. It has only 500,000 lower volume. So even though it's a more expensive stock, has an extremely high volume still. And then the third reason, TA. I drew this little trend line here. I was like, it's at 16. I could buy it around here, and then at worst, I feel like in a bullish market, we can see this rise up to 17. So providing me basically a guaranteed upside, I thought. All right, just a little bit more on Sentinel-1. I love this stock. And CrowdStrike sucks. Well, CrowdStrike doesn't necessarily suck too much, but They've stated all these facts on their website. That makes them better. And I believe in what they say here, and that's why I didn't invest in CrowdStrike, even though I was looking at that stock. Also, it was a small cap, and I wanted to be really risky. Not just to shill SentinelOne, but I wouldn't say that it's just a 5-bagger in 10 years, but maybe a 27-bagger. This stock might be a really golden one. I might have found something really nice. And just to talk about it a little more, actually, they work with EA. Have you ever played FIFA before? Anyone? Yeah, so have you ever seen a hacker in FIFA? No. That's because SentinelOne is protecting you from losing to those hackers. SentinelOne's 10-week run, pretty decent. Volatile, going a little, actually not super volatile here, surprisingly, with its high volume and being a small cap. I think it's just, it had amazing news throughout all 10 weeks, showcasing its relative strength to the market. And it only went to a low of 1513, having a peak at 1985 at the end of the week, liquidating it at 1983, just 2 cents below the peak, and profiting off it $5,000. Right before we moved to NVNA and VNETA, I gotta talk about SentinelOne post liquidation, because this one actually went insane. Just a week after, December 6th, we see the close at $24. That means if we just ended a week later, I would have gained $10,000 instead of the $4,000 that I gained in the stock. And even today, it's at 25.14, which broke its 52-week high and would be a $12,000 increase to my portfolio. So if that doesn't scream 5-bagger, this does. Next up, we have Mivne Real Estate, otherwise pronounced as Krutsa Mivne in Hebrew. It is a stock on the Tel Aviv, which is the Israeli stock market. And there's a few reasons why I bought this stock, but we'll get to that later. It's a real estate structure building group with now over 19 million square meters of land for rent, 563 office buildings, and various structures. This is the CEO, his name is Uzi Levi, and his CFO chair of board of directors is Telford. When I buy this, I use a little technical here. So I didn't really know how to do technical, but I watched like 2 YouTube videos, so I was like, that was fine. The pink channel is basically the range. I went up to 1400 ILA, which is the currency that Yahoo Finance uses. That was a pain to decipher on the tracking logs to actually get my totals. But we see the pink line here is where I want to be by the end, and the green line shows the trend. And I was like, it could come up to here, kind of like the SentinelOne situation where it went up to 7, whereas like it could go up to 17. This one, I said it could go up to this price right here, and it actually was just a little under. So that was a pretty good technical analysis, I would say. Some reasons about MVNE.TA. Why did I buy it? So the Israeli economy is actually pretty strong, has relative strength among other economies, showing that it's actually better than Saudi and just a little under the US. Also has one of the highest GDP per capita relative to the US. Tech innovation in Israel is also a huge factor. 5% of their economy goes straight into tech innovation there. And then the last reason was the Tel Aviv diversification real estate industry. Even though I kind of said that it was a tech stock at the beginning, I'm gonna take that back a little. It's just a little diversification for my portfolio. And then MVNA.TA, was it disastrous? Well, as we all see in early October, around October 7th, the terrorist organization Hamas in Gaza unfortunately attacked Israel. And this is a huge disaster. It wrecked the stock, bringing it down to $8.29 at the start. It was not fun to watch. It was around $2,000 that I lost since I calculated it. But it was, however, rebounding. Later in November, we see truce talks go around. This was huge. Later we see MVNE.TA, Mivne Real Estate, released their Q3 earnings. Huge increase in earnings. And this actually brought the stock all the way back up, recouping my loss and also increasing the amount I gained. In addition, the price of the Israeli currency actually went up by 0.0001 cent, which meant that I actually gained more money on top of the share price increasing. So here's the graph. It stays stagnant for the first 2 weeks, and then we see it drop because of the war, and then it slowly trends back upwards. A little bit of volatility. It's a very small stock. Wouldn't write this down as a 5-bagger because it's on the Tel Aviv, not a very popular market. And we see that it just kind of trends upwards for the rest, getting to a high of 991.30 and a low of 796.00. You can do these calculations if you want to. The calculation is right here, 0.0027 ILA to 1 USD. And it's about $2 per stock. And this actually made me a profit of $1,300, which you wouldn't think in a company that's based in a country that is currently war-torn. Later on, even at December 6th, we see the price go to 1030 ILA, which is 271 USD. And this would have made me around 2,500. So, just to conclude, I want to talk about the House of Rep portfolio compared to the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. So, we can see this trend line, or this line right here, showing the portfolio for the 10 weeks. You see the S&P 500. They actually look very similar if you overlay them. I'll show you in the next slide. And the NASDAQ, very different, but also kind of stays the similar trend of going up in November and peaking around here. So these are the graphs overlaid. My portfolio finishing at 8.21%. The NASDAQ finishing right under me. Woo, we beat the NASDAQ. And we just lost to the S&P by 1%. So the grand total being 114,000 gain of 14,000, around 15% almost. And we went all the way down to 87 at 1 week. So that was not fun. But we eventually, 2 weeks later, go to 122, which would have been huge, but Sentinel-1, this is due to Sentinel-1's reporting their earnings a week after the project ended, sadly. So we would have been at 122. And that is the end, except I actually have one more thing to report, and that is the total from today, which is $126,000. So my stocks have just continued to trend upward after the experiment has ended. Thank you.
Jonas, I know you have some handouts. Tell us about what you got and from which company.
Yes, Ardelyx. The company is Ardelyx. They are the pharmaceutical company that I mentioned at the start. They have a market cap of 4.1, and we will be handing this out right now. The RDX on the NASDAQ.
Jonas, tell us about Sentinel-1. Are you going to be buying that stock with real money, given how strongly you feel that it's going to be, I think you said, a 27-bagger?
Yes, I will be buying that stock, and even recently, it's been getting articles. The Wall Street labeled it as a rising cybersecurity contender. So that label can definitely raise up the price a whole lot, and it just continues to trend upwards. And with the dovish news from the Federal Reserve, I definitely think that the stock is worth investing in at this point.
All right, outstanding job. Any questions from the audience? Robbie?
Yeah, I just want to say I thought you did a really good job, and I thought you really knew your stuff, just in general, and connecting it and overlaying your graphs, and I just thought you did a good job in general. But I had one question. So if you go back to the Mivne technical analysis, I saw that the trend line you drew was a support, but then it wound up turning into resistance. And I'm just wondering if you think it's going to break that. So you see leading up to the big drop, it's kind of support, and then it kind of turns into resistance, bouncing off it a couple of times. I'm wondering what you think about that.
I don't think it's going to turn back upwards just because the war is just going to prolong, to be honest, sadly. I wish it could, but I don't think the Tel Aviv market is really big enough yet, and Israel is just kind of in a bad situation, so
So you think at the end of the graph there, when the graph's kind of going up, you think it's going to bounce off the green line again and go back down?
Yeah, that's exactly what it's doing right now, yes.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much, Jonas. Great job.